Hi, it's George Nordhaus, and welcome to Monday morning. Boy, I've been planning on this one for a long, long time because it's something that's near and dear to my heart. Women. I like women. And women in the insurance business, or even around the world, are, I think, the most wasted asset there possibly is. And I got that information. We began to talk about it with Marilyn Norman, CPCU, and she's a senior client advisor. She's over in the Richmond area in Virginia with ResourcePro, which is quite an organization. I'm going to tell you more about them later because I'm enamored with what they do, and you'll hear about it too. It's a great answer. But let's talk about Marilyn for just a minute. Marilyn, let me see your picture and your biography. Why don't you tell it? You're probably better than I am at it. Go ahead.
Well, I'm not so good at talking about myself, George, but I have over 30 years of experience in the insurance business, and it's been about evenly spread between the carrier side, where I had both field jobs as well as home office jobs, and then the broker side, where once again I was in the field and I ran the Johnson & Higgins and Marsh office in Baltimore. I
Wow.
got my CPCU back in 1989,
Oh, you smart
and
man.
right now, I am working with ResourcePro, and my primary responsibility is to help our clients understand how to drive profitable growth and a competitive advantage in their marketplace through optimizing all of their internal operations.
Hmm. And you do coordinate the China deal, or at least you're
Yes,
part of it. Wow. Well, you're going to people to hear more about that. I was knocked out when I saw that last line. I didn't know that you were the Greater Richmond YMCA past chair. That's fat. I grew up with YMCA. How'd you
me
ever
too.
do that? That's great. Huh? You just were really interested and you just got elected, huh?
Yeah,
That's all there was. Okay.
I've been serving on the board for a long time, and you kind of have to go up through the chairs, and I've been on a branch, and then I went to the corporate board.
Oh my God, the first female chair in 161 years. I'm impressed, Marilyn. I always have been, though. Let's tell them how we got together, okay?
Sure,
All right, here we go. You tell them, or I'll tell them. You tell them.
you can do it.
Well, we were together at a great conference by Resource Pro, and we talked about all kinds of things about innovative initiatives and all the things that could be done. We had a lot of discussion. We talked about all that, but we didn't have any discussion about the needed assets. And they came to our table. We had 4 or 5 of us at our table. It was one of those things where there was a coordinated deal, and they said, "Why don't you guys come up with something? Tell us about women in insurance." And boy, oh boy, we like that. And all of a sudden, I'm looking over at Marilyn, and she is expounding on the subject. And I got so impressed, and I said, "Look, we need to take a good look at the subject. We need a, a worldwide look, not just insurance, in life itself. Uh, how are women doing? Because, well, not any becauses. I'm going to leave it to you. So, Marilyn, you take it. Okay?
All right. One of the things that we talked about a little bit was people in the United States have a tendency to project what happens in the United States on other countries. And I started thinking about how are women in other other countries treated. And the first area that I looked at was the Middle East. And you can see some bullets here where basically women for the most part, operate under the fundamentalist Islamic tradition, where women have roles of wives and mothers. Their education for little girls is done in segregated schools, where they focus on bringing up these girls to be good mothers and wives. And their whole religious underpinning supports a very patriarchal society. Having said that, not all Middle Eastern countries are the same. Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Iran are the toughest. And in Kuwait, women are not allowed to vote at all.
Yeah, we read all that. You see all of the things within their burqas or whatever those things are called. I'm not quite sure what. And it's just amazing how restricted they are. It's so frustrating. That's why I wanted you to cover this country, the world, because I want to put us in context. Go ahead.
Okay, well, the next one I did a little looking into was Africa, and treatment in Africa of women varies greatly from country to country. But one of the things that's fairly common is that the women work twice as long as the men. Their workday is 12 to 18 hours a day for half the pay.
Oh, brother.
And they grow 80% of the food produced, but they are not allowed to own land. Their primary role, as in the Middle East, is to be wives and mothers. And because of that, they are handicapped in their access to formal sector employment due to their lack of education.
Wow. I didn't know that.
So the next area that I looked at.
Look at that. 2/3 of them are illiterate. I didn't
I
realize
know.
that either. Wow. Go ahead.
If they can't read, it keeps them pretty ignorant.
Oh, God, I can imagine. All right.
So then I went to look at Latin America, which is a little closer to us, and it was interesting to see that in Latin America, only 35% of the population even respects women. And when you compare that to the other two areas of the world that I talked about, being the Middle East and Africa, you can see that at least in those countries they respect women more, and the United States, the respect level is at 77%. So when you contrast us to our southern neighbors, we are much more, I think, enlightened about women in the U.S. than elsewhere in the world.
Yeah, what do you think there when they say respect women? Okay, the U.S. 77%. Does that mean 23? 23% don't respect women. They don't. What that mean? You don't respect? Do you have any idea?
When they don't respect women, they are very much traditionalist in their points of view that women should have certain jobs: wives, mothers, maybe teachers and nurses. But beyond that, they don't feel that women can be contributors.
I can't imagine that in the United States. Isn't that scares me? Go ahead.
So then I know, obviously, China is near and dear to me because that's where the majority of the workforce for ResourcePro resides, and I think they have a very rich history. But historically, the women were treated very much like second-class citizens. They did not even have names, and when they got married, they got known by their husbands' or their fathers' names. Concubines were common and accepted primarily to ensure the birth of male babies because males obviously take on the name. Historically, women did not go to school. And when the communist takeover took place in 1949, Chairman Mao did popularize literacy, gender equality, abolition of foot binding, which went away in 1912. He allowed free love and marriage rather than arranged marriages.
Wow.
The males, though, are still more highly valued than females as they carry on the family name. And when they went through all of their years of one child, there were quite a few females who were killed early because they weren't males. More of the migrant workers are females than males, and that's been an interesting phenomenon because the girls have started leaving the villages to find jobs to make money. And they have very, very low participation rates as political leaders. More females than males are working in occupations such as professional, technical occupants, commerce and service, and industrial production.
That's a good thing, isn't it? I mean, it seems like it's a good step in the right direction.
And I think since the takeover and of Chairman Mao, there has been significant progress made by the women in China.
I believe it.
And life has become much better for them. They've recently been allowed to have 2 children, and that's a big change.
Well,
now let's come home and look at the United States. The United States is awesome, but it's not perfect. The remuneration between the genders is not equal, and one of the things that many of us are not aware of is that even between the races it's not equal. African American and Latino women are paid less than Caucasian women.
I didn't know that. Should have, but I didn't.
And I think 2 things, though, that are very good when you contrast it to the other countries. Women can choose or not to get married, and they can choose to have or not children.
Yeah, why not? Well, okay, go ahead.
Well, after I looked at all of these facts, I got to thinking about what's underpinning so much of this. And when you look at these at this slide, half of the world's population, 7.3 billion, lives on less than $2.50 a day.
Good Lord.
That's low poverty.
Oh my gosh. Why is that? Why do you care? Why do you want that in here for? Why do you want to?
I think that when people are not educated, the compensation has a tendency to follow close behind. And the story gets a little sadder. More than 1.3 billion live in extreme poverty on less than $1.25 a day. Most of them are scrounging off the land.
Well, so what? So what? I guess that's what we need to know. That's fascinating to me, how bad that
Well,
is.
you said exactly the right thing. You know, so I've given you a lot of facts, and so what? Why should anyone really care?
Uh-huh.
And I wanted to talk a little bit about what we know about women today.
Good.
And it's based on a joint study that was done by the University of Georgia and Columbia University.
Hmm.
And what is happening here?
Well, there you
Okay.
go.
Women have higher IQs. They're far superior at multitasking.
That's for
They
sure.
are superior interviewers. They invest better. They actually average an 18% return, benchmarked against men at 11%. Women are cleaner, more germ-free in the workplace.
That's nice.
They learn faster and graduate. The majority of them graduate from college in 4 years, where it takes men 5+. Women learn better. They have stronger immune systems, and they have a better chance of surviving serious accidents. Men are 70% more likely to die from an accident than women. Yeah, I found that very astounding as well.
I do too. I'm going to let my wife do my investing from now on. That's okay.
So why should women matter? And I feel very strongly that the emerging and future technologies will require an educated workforce.
Sure.
And science has taught us over the years that teams made up of men and women working together are much more creative and productive than single-sex teams.
Good. I like that.
So as we look at global opportunities and move ourselves and our thinking outside of the U.S., threats will occur everywhere, not just in fully developed countries. And as we really think out into the future and the possibility of intergalactic opportunities, it is going to require significant intellectual collaboration to define the next state of the world. So why do women matter? The world's population is presently pretty evenly split between men and women. Men, about 102 to 100 women until age 20. We all know that women live a little bit longer, so those numbers become more skewed towards women as they get older. But around the time of marrying, in their 20s, it's pretty even. And a significant percentage of the world's female population has to begin to be viewed as viable contributors. They've got to be educated on a global basis to prepare themselves and us to contribute to providing solutions. And the work needs to be equally recognized and equally compensated to encourage equal contribution and engagement.
That's easy for you to say, but how about in our industry? Because it ain't that way in our industry, I don't believe.
Well, the insurance industry actually has been fairly inclusive. They have quite a few females and quite a few minorities, except at the top levels. I'm not sure why there aren't women in the high levels. It's a growing industry and one that will last. There will always be risk. And over the next 5 to 7 years, this is kind of an astounding fact that I've been hearing about for probably the last 10 years. There will be a huge talent drain due to retirement. Most of the people in the insurance industry, it's a graying industry, and yet it's a viable and ongoing industry. And as people have talked about, how are we going to get young people in? How are we going to get perpetuation planning going? And they begin talks with the millennials. The millennials don't really view insurance as a stable and innovative industry, and they don't pursue as many opportunities within that industry as they kind of perceive it to be all full of baby boomers and very rigid and full of roles. Whoops.
Well, that's right. That's right. You take it back. Just move it back one. You can do that. There you go. That's good. Good.
I think to attract young professionals into the business, the insurance must become attractive to them. It needs to be viewed as a pretty cool place to work.
Well, I think so too, and I think a lot of us have tried to do that. And of course, there's Project Invest, where they train them, and there's so much going on in this thing, but it's just not there yet. I think a lot of that has to do with things like I don't pick on them, but Geico's of the world and so forth, where they're commoditizing insurance. And I think the young people look at that and say, it's a commodity. Anybody can do that if they want to. They don't need, and I think there's a lot of that. But I believe the future is going to be a little bit different. I think we're going to put the personal back into the business, but that's a whole other point. Now, what do you guys do at ResourcePro to prove that what you just said is the right thing?
I'm so glad you asked. Well, ResourcePro is the company where I work, and I think one of the biggest differences in the way ResourcePro thinks about the insurance world is we view it through operational process. We only work with clients that are in the insurance industry, working on all P&C coverages, employee benefits, and personal lines. And what we work to do is change the paradigm around we need to hire more producers, we need to hire more account managers, to we need to start thinking about our work from an operational standpoint, identify and get rid of waste, collaborate on appropriate sourcing of the right people in the right roles so that you bring in people or you have people working on less complex work with a career plan to move them up to higher jobs of responsibility. And we also provide customized services as well as technology solutions to our clients.
Maybe I could jump on that. That's right. Leave it there. I jump on that a little bit. You were maybe the first. I don't know that that's the case, but one of the first in the insurance business to outsource, to let this business be done by China or India. Was it the first, or do you know?
I'm not sure that we were the first. I think outsourcing was certainly around before ResourcePro was birthed 11 years ago.
Yeah.
But I think having said that, what we began to realize was initially our company was built on the labor arbitrage. We could get much less expensive work done in China by highly educated people.
Right.
And as we have evolved, in many cases, because our clients have asked us to continue to provide additional solutions, we have become a keeper of data. We're able to help our clients make data-driven decisions. We are also able to benchmark them one against the other to help them get better and help them to be able to understand what are the best practices and how can they incorporate those best practices into their organization. So we have grown significantly from being that company in China that outsources people to being operational efficiency experts.
I can't believe it. You know, I had your president, Dan Epstein, on a program of mine back in, I want to say 2002, 2003 or something. It's just getting started. And when I see 2,000 plus employees, it blows my mind. It's fantastic. You're all over the world, aren't you? Where are you? Let me see those locations.
Well, I'll let you. We have 5 locations: Qingdao, China; Jinan, China. We just opened up an office last year in Wandao, China, and also one in Bangalore, India. We have our main office, our headquarters are in New York, and we are opening up an onshore capability in Nebraska by year end.
In where?
In Lincoln, Nebraska.
Oh, we don't. Well, you got agents in a lot. I mean, you got people like you in various places around, though. I mean.
Yes, we are a firm believer in remote working, obviously, and so when ResourcePro has looked for the talent that have the skills that they need, they decided it doesn't matter where they live. It matters whether or not they are collaborators.
I imagine they work. I understand what you're saying. I imagine they work in little bitty huts in China, right? That you have to go in and and no lights and all. Let me see. Yeah, you got a picture of any of the places you work in?
Well, the picture here, the one on the left is our office in Qingdao.
Wow.
The one on the right is our office in Jinan, and the picture at the bottom is it's typical of all of the ResourcePro offices. You can see them working with dual monitors. And we have deliberately set up the walls to be low so that they can collaborate and talk. And hopefully you also can notice or get a little feel for how young the workforce is.
Yeah, you can see it. Yeah. And they like greenery. I like that.
They do. Well, they're very, they try to be better custodians of the environment.
All right. But you've been trying to make a point this whole time, haven't you?
Yes.
Who do you hire?
Well, this is where I think there is a big difference here, and the difference at ResourcePro is the people. Our emphasis is on college-educated individuals, multilingual. They must have either formalized their English or grown up being multilingual. Mm-hmm. Our staff is all very young. We go through a huge recruiting period, and I think more interesting than anything is that our workforce in China is over 80% female.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. That's
So,
amazing. I'm
well,
not,
if you think about the other countries and the things that are going on in their countries, and then you look at what's going on in our office and what's going on in China, I think it is very amazing.
oh boy. What do they look like?
Here's a couple of them. This will give you an idea of what, these are my colleagues. They're actually caught doing their various different activities.
Uh-huh.
One of the things that we've learned with millennials is their different expectations of a work environment than baby boomers. They want to be told, what is a job that you want done, and what does success and good look like? Then let me figure out the hours I need to work, and let me figure out how to get it done, and I will use social media to help me. And for some baby boomers, that's really hard. And they like to collaborate, they like to play together to build teams. And so what you see here are a number of the ResourcePro employees working together, in many cases building teams.
You know, Marilyn, why I like this is that all of us have talked about offshoring or outsourcing. Excuse me. We've all it's sort of we can't figure out what's out there. I mean, you just don't think about them as human beings. That's why I like this. It's
Well,
really
and I
neat.
think when I showed you the office, before I went to China for the first time, as I was getting on the plane, I was wondering what was China going to be like. And my initial thoughts were, I'm going to get lost in the Beijing airport. It's so big, and I don't speak Chinese. And when I hear Chinese being spoken, it sounds like everybody's singing. Uh, and when I got there, nothing that I thought about China was true. Everything, the Beijing airport, we could take a page out of that book. They write everything in Chinese and in English. None of the airlines own a gate. They work it much more efficiently than U.S. airports. Got to our office and I was completely astounded and impressed by walking in and feeling like I was in my own office. Dual monitors. The one thing that is missing, there is not a telephone on a single person's desk at ResourcePro.
Wow.
They are exactly 12 hours ahead of the East Coast.
Uh-huh.
So when they're working, their clients are sleeping. There's no need to have a phone there.
Well, I guess that's right. I never really thought of that. You know, incidentally, I like that lower left-hand side. Those girls look pretty good for the beach. I didn't know the Chinese girls looked at. Anyway, you and I had a Chinese, one of your employees at that table when we first met at the meeting. We talked
You're
about
right.
innovations of women. What was her name?
Her name was Rebecca.
Boy, she was so sharp. I can't believe it. And I kept listening to, I mean, she works in China, right? She was over here.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, she was over here on a visit.
And it was great. But I kept listening, saying, "What? I'm going to hear something with an accent." She had absolutely no accent. I mean, her English was perfect. And I said, "Well, how did you do that? Where did you learn it? Your parents?" No. Did you go to school? No. How'd you do it? In school in China, she majored in English. And I want to tell you that no, I'm sure a lot of these people do have accents, but it's not really that important. But she was magnificent. Boy, I was really impressed.
I agree with you, George, and I think the one thing that they struggle with is a lot of our slang.
Oh,
And
yeah.
on Fridays, while English is the only language allowed to be spoken on our campuses, but
Wow.
on Friday they have English Friday, and they put up little sayings that are unique to the U.S. And once in a while I'll hear one of them was early bird gets the worm. And they thought it meant first one up gets shot.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I bet you guys got so many stories. It's unreal.
We have lots of stories about them.
All right,
So
let me challenge you right now. Well, future, that's a girl. What are we gonna? What do you think is gonna happen on this whole thing?
I think at the rate the technology is being created, we have lots of challenges moving forward to use appropriately our assets to accomplish what we want to. So I've thrown out a couple of pretty crazy ideas, but I hope what it does is stimulate thinking. And some of the ideas that I came up with was, what if the G7 leaders would agree to finance the education of all female hires made by their top 500 employees?
Well, that's a challenge. That's beautiful. Never
What
heard.
if we
I
get
never
to
heard
this?
that before. Incidentally, I have never heard anybody say that before. Have you? Is that yours?
Yeah, I have not heard anybody say that either.
Yeah, I would give you credit. Move on.
Well, thank you. I think it would be wonderful and challenging, but ultimately very rewarding. If we could get the CEOs of the top 1,000 companies in every country to have a bonus component that includes improving pay inequalities between men and women by 50%, identifying and bringing 25% more females on their boards, and hiring more females than males at each level of the organization for the next 3 years.
I bet these guys are shaking in their boots to think that we're going to go countrywide with this. This is going out to 50,000 people tomorrow. My gosh, that's great. I love it. I love it.
I think that men and women together can achieve much more success than men alone, or women alone for that matter.
Me too. Okay, man. What you can do? I was going to say, what about the insurance industry?
Well, I think it's more even, George, at a personal level. What can people today in every industry begin to start doing and make a conscious effort to incorporate into their strategic plans? And I think it's including women in your upwardly mobile positions, equal pay, and set an example of gender blindness and encourage it and model it throughout your organization.
Wow. That's great. We got to pass the word here. Absolutely.
Well, I'd love to hear other people's thoughts. And I realize some of my examples stretched, and I really intentionally did that, only because I hoped that the earlier part of the presentation showed us a reason why we need to start to look at the cultivation of our women to prepare us for the future.
Well, I think you're exactly right. I think you've done a wonderful job here. I challenged you with all this, and you came through, and we've talked, and it's just amazing what you've done here. And I think that I just hope that we can get this in the hands. All the women who are listening to this, give it to the guys, will you? Pass it along. Give it to your husbands if you've got one, or boyfriends, or whatever it might be. Get them out there. Get them out so they can really see it, because we've got to make this change. It's crazy if we don't. We've got the greatest assets here. Well, you said it in the title. It's the biggest asset that we're not taking advantage of, and we really need to do it. I've tried to do it all my life. I probably, in retrospect, I can, thinking back, I've never had a president, a female president of my various firms. I'm an entrepreneur, except now I do. I have a couple agencies online that's sponsoring this as the president, and that's Val Jordan, and another firm that I'm working with, and my wife's president of insurance hiring system. But I don't have much choice in that case. Okay.
Well, I think you're right, and George, when I was also reflecting on the way girls and boys, the differences in how they're brought up, and some of the phrases that are used, like "run like a girl" and "throw a ball like a girl." I think we need to be conscious of how sexist a lot of our conversation is, because we're molding the young women and young men of the future by what they hear.
And I love it. All right, well, let's end it, but let's let them contact you if you'd like to talk. Two things. One, contact Marilyn. You can call her there or work at Cell or whatever. What's that remote office? That's right on Richmond, isn't it? Right?
Yes, it's Mannequin Sabbath, and it is probably about 20 minutes from downtown Richmond.
Okay, I hadn't heard of it, but I guess it's. But at any rate, I knew we were in and around Richmond. Call her. Call Marilyn. She'll talk to you. And I tell you what else is my challenge to them. Send me any comments that you have, ladies or men either. Send me some comments, and I'll use this on Monday morning, because I think we're going to build on this some more. Marilyn, your job isn't over. I'm going to assign you to do more in the future. Maybe we'll come back at them. Yeah, let's come back in 6 months and see if there's any major changes made or something. Want to?
George, I would love to.
All right. Thanks again. And the rest of you, go back to the email today, and there's always some good stuff in there. You can go to the archive and get that. We've got some other great speakers coming on, unbelievable in the future here. We're getting bigger and bigger, and we want you to keep looking at Monday morning.